AviationPros.com is the portal website for AMT, Airport Business, and Ground Support Worldwide magazines. Visit daily for breaking news, industry blogs, and insightful articles from our magazine's editorial team. And don't forget to sign up for our publication's daily e-newsletters. It's all at AviationPros.com.
Hello and welcome to the Aviation Pros podcast. I'm Christina Marsh, editor of Airport Business. LAX recently integrated a new sound solution from Renkus-Heinz. Jeff Barrett, system design engineer at DirectAV, and Garrison Parkin, Western Regional Sales Manager at Renkus-Heinz, join us to tell us more about how the new system is improving operations at the airport. First of all, Jeff, Garrison, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, what can you tell us about the new sound solution at LAX?
This solution was designed around the spaces that are in the terminal. Were designed to be a lot more open air and free from obstruction, and that presented some challenges for us because generally speaking, we have to have a place to put our speakers. So we moved to a solution with Renkus steerable line arrays that allowed us to put those in the areas where they needed to be and still get fantastic audio quality at listener locations throughout the terminal and the walkway down the concourse.
How is this new system improving the day-to-day operations at the airport?
Well, I mean, it serves several different areas. So, I mean, from what Jeff was saying is that there's multiple areas from when the traveler, actually enters the airport. There's the initial ticket counter. Those areas need to be covered for announcements. And then once you move through security and moving on towards the gate, there's a host of common areas for all the travelers to congregate. And then once they get to the end destination there at the gate, there's also additional announcements there. So it has a lot of different effects because while there's canned announcements that happen throughout an airport at any given moment, but then once you get to the gate, each gate has the gate attendants that are actually giving instructions and calling out names and things of that nature. So it's definitely a combination of the canned announcements as well as live announcements from the people as well. So it really has to be intelligible at every single level. Otherwise, people aren't going to be able to know what's happening and they won't be able to pay attention.
As Garrison said, our goal is always to provide intelligible announcement audio to all of the airport clientele, and that means providing that level of service from the time they enter the building to the time that they get to the gate, and ensuring that they get all the information they need as they're on their way.
So this new sound system is part of a larger project happening at LAX. Can you tell us more about Renkus-Heinz involvement in that project and what we can expect?
There's a new expansion that's planned for the south end of this terminal, which will essentially blow out the south wall and continue the concourse in the southern direction and extend it to the point where it has similar gates and functionality to the north side that's already existing now in that new terminal.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think one of the reasons why the amount of expansion is happening is Los Angeles is going to be hosting the Summer Olympics in 2028. They're expecting millions of additional travelers, and they're looking to increase their footprint and their fingerprints with the international travelers. So while there's some additional terminals and gates being added for that, I believe there's also some additional infrastructure going in for moving people from point A to point B. Very, very large parking structures where the rental car agencies will be. It's quite an expansion. It goes above the realm of which I know, but it's what I've been told, and it's we're definitely working with DirectAV as well as the the airport authority to develop the right paging applications that are needed. I mean, if the travelers cannot hear the announcements, then they're going to get lost and not be in the right place at the right time. So.
Renkus-Heinz is using the Iconics Gen 5 IC16 system at LAX. Can you tell us how that technology is being utilized at the airport?
Yeah, I mean, Renkus-Heinz has been, we've been around since 1979, and we have, since 2005, we have really specialized in the digital steerable columns. And these digitally steerable columns have gone, well, we're on our 5th generation of product at this point in time. But the idea is that when you line up all of the drivers, all of these audio transducers in a vertical line, creating a line array, using filters, using our software, you can take that tall column, and then you can then steer the sound in a vertical fashion. You can mount the speaker up higher and steer the sound where the ears are, and then you can cover from where the listener is fairly nearby, say 10 to 15 feet from the loudspeaker, out to hundreds of feet farther out, depending on what you're trying, what the audience area or the intended coverage area needs to be. It's a technology that we've been perfecting for quite some time, and it's the idea is that you put the sound where the people's ears are and minimize hitting the other walls, the reflected walls from the sides and on the far side, on the back wall. So it works quite effective, and it keeps the intelligibility extremely high.
As Garrison said, the goal is for intelligibility, and so one of the key challenges as part of any of these installations is to satisfy many different requirements. One of them that seems to be increasingly challenging is on the design side, satisfying architectural desires. A lot of these spaces are being designed with architectural amenities and features that are beautiful to the eye, and architects want to keep the profile of our devices very low. While I personally find the technology and its implementation beautiful, other people don't like that. And so this allows us to satisfy some of those requirements by better hiding some of our footprint and still meeting the technical challenges, providing intelligible audio to passengers and keeping those reflections and echoes, if you will, in those spaces to a minimum to maintain consistency.
Yeah, that's one of the very large, challenges. One of the big pieces to the puzzle in designing systems like this is the architecture, as Jeff mentioned. Very, very beautiful architecture, but it does make it challenging because of all of the hard/reflective surfaces that the architects build into it. Lots of reflective surfaces, hard, shiny surfaces. Not a lot of soft, cushy things to absorb the sound. So therefore, the reflections are just all over the place. Very challenging. But by having thin vertical column loudspeakers, we are able to, with the design element with Direct AV, to place them where you don't really necessarily see them. While Renkus-Heinz still makes wonderful large black boxes for performing arts theaters and stuff like that, having a thin painted to match column loudspeaker really starts to it works for the space because it blends in and it makes it almost disappear. We've had many different installations where with some amazing photography, you look at it and you have to wonder, where did they put the loudspeakers? Because by having that form factor, it really lends to the architecture in itself.
Is there anything an airport needs to consider or prepare for before installing a new sound system?
Go ahead and take that, Jeff. that's there's many there's many facets to that.
If I were to choose one thing above all else, it would probably be acoustical treatment. So it's a big challenge, even with modern technology, to overcome acoustical challenges if they're not developed on the front end of a design. This particular terminal that we're discussing in its open space and hard surfaces, even given those challenges, I think we're designed with an acoustical treatment in mind in the proper places. There's a few spots that are probably exceptions, but that's to be taken for granted in any installation. But I was pleasantly surprised in this particular installation by the spaces and how they lacked reflectivity where I thought they would have had that.
Yeah, I think you're right. When we did the final tuning, I was, that commissioning, I was skeptical in a couple of areas. I was skeptical that we could achieve the STI measurements that are needed for for proper coverage and proper intelligibility. But it actually worked out quite well. There was I think there were some adjacent walls that were not 90 degrees that were helping us by minimizing some of the reflections that I thought were going to be there. So very, very challenging.
How has the Iconics Gen 5 IC16 system helped to eliminate some of the challenges posed by reflective surfaces?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the key features of the Renkus-Heinz line arrays is its steerability, as we've been discussing, and that allows you to steer the sound to where listeners are going to be needing to hear it, and ensuring that it does not hit reflective surfaces where it doesn't need to be. And this helps immensely by changing the dynamic of spaces that would normally exhibit more echo or more reflectivity from traditional loudspeaker systems.
Yeah, I mean, it is challenging because many times the speaker placement, it's dictated. It has to be in a certain spot. So there's some additional tweaking, if you will, that needs to happen in order to fine tune it. From where that first listener would be to the farthest listener, and trying to get the coverage definitely takes quite a bit of time. And then one of the other details that come into play is, since a lot of these spaces are so open, there's a lot of time alignment issues. It takes a lot of effort to time align an entire terminal when there are so many gates that are lined up one after another, and they have to be time aligned. When they're doing local gate announcements, it's not so much of a deal, but when there's a large general announcement that's going throughout the entire terminal, you cannot be hearing it at 2 or 3 different arrival times. You can't be hearing that announcement. It has to be heard once. Otherwise, the intelligibility goes way down. It's challenging with those large open spaces. But I think the technology, along with some patience in fine tuning these things, has I think it was one of the finest sounding terminals that I've ever been involved in. It just sounded great. Many times we don't have that luxury of having that perfect coverage, but I think the boys at the team over at Direct AV, as well as the design team that helped him design it on paper initially, took a lot of that stuff into consideration and pulled off a really nice project.
Is there anything else you think airports need to consider before installing a new sound system?
Well, let's see. From my perspective, as the manufacturer, we like to think that we do the transportation sector very, very well. Projects that were in the transportation sectors, in addition, not just airports, but we're talking about train stations, subway stations, things of that nature. We like to think that we do it very, very well because of our heritage and all of the design elements that we've done in the past. There are there are so many different ways to look at a project, and a lot of it has to do with what the end user, what the client is really, what their expectations are. Setting those, it's a really big deal, and making sure that those expectations, along with the architectural elements, making sure that everybody's kind of playing within those realms. Another thing that does come to mind as well is the overall infrastructure. With Renkus-Heinz Iconics loudspeakers, we are the end point. We're the very end point of that signal transmission. But there are so many other layers of electronics upstream from what we have. Those elements, from the AV network, the data network, those things are very, very important to the overall infrastructure, and making sure that things are flexible in the future in case things need to be rerouted, or something needs to be changed. There's a lot of things to be considered on that side of as well.
I think not just for airports, but for any client, I would recommend starting with your particular use case and designing from the ground up a solution that fits your particular needs. So I would start with needs analysis and then grow from there, and ensure that at that point you're selecting not only components, but also partner manufacturers and firms that are going to help you reach those goals along the way, be able to support them in the future. This is probably one of the most important things to consider at the front end.
Great. Well, Garrison, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks again for listening to today's podcast. Stay up to date on industry news, current issues, and information specifically for airports, airport operations, FBOs, and airport-based business by subscribing to Airport Business Daily Newsletter. And as always, please continue to visit AviationPros.com.